Now, as part of efforts to boost revenue mobilization and ensure economic growth, the government has stated that it is implementing more measures to improve the country's tax to gross domestic product (GDP) ratio. According to Abinose Asare, the Minister of State at the Finance Ministry, though the government has increased its tax mobilization efforts in the formal sector in recent times, plans are far advanced to widen the tax base. There's more in the following reports.
Ghana's tax collection is low compared to other lower middle-income countries. Non-compliance of tax payments is an urgent issue in the country as government has been suffering from a widened fiscal deficit and a rising debt burden. Though the country has increased its tax mobilization efforts in the formal sector in recent times, many stakeholders note that these increments, however, seem insufficient to support development, which in turn pushes governments to donor partners and other international organizations for support. Although Ghana's tax to GDP ratio of less than 14% is significantly lower than the average for 30 African countries and much lower than some comparable lower middle income countries. Speaking during a panel discussion at the ongoing IMF-World Bank spring meetings in Washington, D.C. on the theme, Unlocking Domestic Resources for Development Through Global Partnership, Abinose Asare, Minister of State at the Finance Ministry, highlighted measures government is putting in place to address challenges facing its revenue mobilization efforts.
One of the challenges that we see in Ghana is the narrow tax base. The narrow tax base. Most of the economy is not formalized. When I say that, I mean that most of the people are in the informal sector, and so we are not able to capture and then bring them onto the tax end when it comes to payment of direct taxes. Prior to 2017, we had about just 1.2 million people paying direct taxes when the number of people eligible to pay taxes was around 6 million people. So clearly you could tell that the tax base was narrow. And so we need to do something to address this. Our revenue administration, there's a lot that we need to do to prop up in terms of reducing human interventions and digitizing most of our revenue lines to make sure that we are able to rake in more revenue. And also, there's a culture of non-compliance. You assess, they refuse to pay, and so we're coming up with all kinds of enhancements that will help us address this.
She also gave more insights into what government is doing to scrutinize the utilization of taxes collected.
One thing government is also doing to make sure that public financing are utilized in the best way to help or support citizens is the fact that we are empowering the independent institutions like the Audit Service, the Internal Audit Agency, and all the other independent institutions that will act as a check on the way public finances are spent. And so clearly when you look at the budget from 2017 to date, government is making sure that they improve on allocations that are made to these independent institutions to also help. Again, with the passage of the Right to Information Bill, this gives any citizen at all the right to demand for some accountability from government on the way a contract was given, monies were spent on a particular project. And so all these things sort of opens up and helps shape the way public financing is spent in the country.
Despite government's assurances that its revenue mobilization efforts will enhance economic growth, stakeholders within the tax space continue to call for fairness within the tax system as they will prefer a proper balance within the tax burden among sectors of the economy. My name is Nete Ajaho for Citi Business News.